Hi, this is Chris Goodbody here with another installment of Spotlight on Business. Today I have the privilege of meeting with Mark Hiatt, who's the president and founder of Your Networking Universe, which is a company that supports business networking efforts where businesses can join a group and work together and pass leads and grow their businesses that way. And had a real opportunity to get to know Mark a little bit by joining one of his groups and getting to know him a little bit better in the process of attending that and working with him there. I'm really pleased to be able to interview today Mark Hiatt with Your Networking Universe. Mark, it's good to be with you today.
Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, that's a that's a great question, because that, of course, is the question that you walk into a networking event and everybody says, "What do you do?" And since I happen to teach networking, I teach that we answer that question literally. So what I do is I help people to form a network that allows them to pass business back and forth within that network and make money as a result.
Okay, so networking, I think everybody's familiar with the basic concept of networking. What stands out in terms of what makes your networking groups different than all the others out there?
Great question also. There's many ways that you can do things in the networking world, and they're all good. There's really no wrong thing that you can do when networking, but I think there is more effective ways to network than others. I think it's really a good idea to also start with what networking is not before we get into what networking is. And what networking is not is walking into a room full of strangers and saying, "Here, have my business card." "Okay, you have my business card. All right, what do you do?" "I don't know. What do you do?" I say, "I'm an accountant." "So, okay, great. You're an accountant? Yeah, I don't really need that. Let me go talk with somebody else." Networking begins when I meet you at a networking event and I say, "Oh, Chris, it's really good to meet you. You know, you're selling to people in similar situations to the people that I'm selling to. I wonder if we might be able to get together and find out how we can help each other, and if we, there's the trust there, the rapport there, all these things that need to be there. But if we can get to that point, we could pass a lot of business back and forth. Every time I sit down with a client, I can find out, do they need your service? You can find out from your clients, do you need this person's service?" And that is where networking really begins. So what differentiates me from my competition partly is philosophy. I believe that networking begins with relationships, and so I believe that many leads group organizations out there, they have lead passing requirements. They say you have to pass 3 leads every month in order to be a member, and I've turned that a little bit around and said there's a participation requirement. And instead of a lead passing requirement, what I'm going to ask is that you do one of 4 things. You could pass a lead, or you could do a one-on-one where you and I get together, we find out a little bit more about each other. Or you could bring a guest to the meeting, or you could do a power partner introduction where I introduce you to somebody who could possibly pass business your way. And so the focus really in my groups is on those one-on-ones and saying, at the very least, do 3 one-on-ones every month. That's going to help build that relationship that you have with the other people in the group. And it really begins with relationships. If we can build a relationship first and get to the point where I have that trust, I have that rapport, I understand when and why people need your service, I'm able to and I want to pass business your way. So I don't have a lead passing requirement, I have a participation requirement. That's one big difference. I also have a very strong focus on training. I think it's important that everyone in a leads group get on the same page and understand, why are we there? We're there for the purpose of passing outside leads. We're there for the purpose of really building that strong relationship to the point where I can consistently pass you business and you can consistently pass me business.
Yeah, that's really the goal, isn't it? I mean, it'd be great if we could all have that business coming in. Tell me a little bit about the strength of a referral as opposed to kind of a cold call sale.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in networking, there also is that concept of what you might call a bad lead, where I say, talk to this person. I happen to run into them in a networking event, and I think they probably need your service. And that's where, the training comes in a leads group, is that people need to understand that that's not really a lead. That's just, you could pick up the phone and call this person and probably have the same results. So where this whole concept becomes powerful is when I get to the point where I'm able to connect with this person's need. They have a problem of some kind. I'm able to connect with that problem, maybe with a story. You've told me a story about how you've helped somebody in the insurance world, for example. And I go to this person, I find out that they're, in a situation where they maybe need your service. So I use one of your stories to connect to that need. I say, oh, I know somebody that was in that situation, and they had this tremendous result by working with this guy named Chris. And they said, oh, who's this Chris person? And I said, tell you what, I can put you in touch with Chris, and I think you'd really like him. He's got I found out about you because I'm in a leads group with you, and he's into hiking, he's into all these things that we've talked about that you're into. I think you'd have a really good connection, and I think that he can help you solve this problem. So let me have Chris give you a call. That to me is how we pass leads in a leads group. I get to the point where that person's curious, they're interested, they want to do, they may not want to do business with you, but they at least want to find out what makes you different and interesting. And then I make that connection, and you give them a call, and they're expecting that call.
Yeah, I think the referral is so much more powerful and so much easier to sell than a cold call or cold referral or walk-in, those kinds of things. I've been a member of one of your leads groups now for several months, and I found the idea very refreshing in terms of what was expected and what was done in terms of promoting each other in the group, and it's been a great experience. The group that we're in is still a little bit new in terms of growing the numbers. Tell me a little bit about the successes you've had as you've seen groups begin to blossom and have successes in this concept.
You bet. And it does take a while. Every group is different. Every group of people is different. That's what makes us human. It will take a differing amount of time for each group to gel and get to the point where they understand how to pass business to each other. One example that quickly comes to mind is the East Portland group here that has been together now probably about a year, or perhaps longer than the group that you're in, and is really now starting to gel. There's a few factors there. One is their size. They're a 22-member group, and typically life begins at 20 in a leads group. You get to about 20 members, things really start moving along, things start happening. Very wise goal to get to that 20-member level. But also just the comfort of people being around each other, understanding each other's business, that increases. The comfort level there, the comfort level of understanding networking and how to introduce somebody to someone else effectively. All of these different things start to just be more comfortable for members. So typically, you start to see a lot of leads passed when a group gets to 20 members, when it's been around for a little while, where the members really are comfortable with each other. So normally at about the year point, you see your leads group really start to take off and do well.
Interesting. Well, that's good to know. I appreciate knowing that.
Yes.
And I kind of arrived at that conclusion on my own that it does take time. The relationships have to be established, and you kind of want to get to know everybody in the group, and then things will start to happen. And tell me a little bit more about your background, your successes, some of the things that you've done. I mean, you've started leads groups in other states, is that right?
I have. I actually started this crazy business, or started in this business in 1998. So it's been a while now, and I worked for a company, a national organization that creates leads groups. We parted ways at a certain point in 2001. I started my own business. So it's been quite a while now, but I think, to answer your question, where my passion comes from is my background. I was probably the shyest person that you ever could have met in the not too distant past. And anything I think that you overcome, anything that you say, I'm going to become better at this. And when I got the position as a leads group organizer at that point, I realized I don't have any idea what I'm doing. So I picked up every book I could find on networking. I read about interpersonal relationships, and I tackled this thing that I was not very good at, and suddenly found that, through learning, you can become good at just about anything. So I began to apply what I was learning, and I found out that a lot of the books are wrong. They don't have it completely right. So I started experimenting with my own ideas and doing my own thing and trying to figure out what is the formula here for getting to the point where you can build a relationship, build that trust, and do it quickly, and then start passing business back and forth. And that is all part of the training that I've put together. All the things that I learned personally and on that journey is part of the training. And there's a lot that you can get from reading many books on a subject. So.
Yeah, there's plenty of books out there.
There are.
and you're right. I think there's some that are better than others.
Definitely.
Well, we all have this instinct that says, oh, I know I need to do something different in my business. I know I need to meet with people. I know I need to associate with other people so I can generate business that way somehow. But I think when it comes to understanding how to effectively network, I think there's a lot of ignorance out there. I think we just don't really have any concept of what it means, how to do it effectively, how to promote ourselves effectively, and help promote others, which is something that's been a great part of your training and your group, is that you talk extensively about the fact that we need to promote each other, and that's how we can get to know each other better and establish those relationships.
Definitely, and that's a good point. It really, when you don't have a relationship yet with somebody, you have to think, how do I build that relationship? How do I build the trust and the rapport? And becoming good at promoting somebody really takes your relationship to that next level. It allows you to, before I really know you, I'm not going to feel comfortable passing you business possibly. I'm not going to, take a client I've had for 10 years and say, talk to Chris, I've known him 2 months, and hope that you do a good job. But what I can do is I can start promoting you. I can go online, I can go onto a LinkedIn group and say, I just found out cool information about Chris Goodbody, and here's some of that information, and I can post it out there. And then you see that I'm doing that, and so you say, hey, Mark's trying to get to know me and trying to build that relationship. I might go to a networking event with you and say, you know what, Chris, let's do something crazy here. When somebody walks up and says, what do you do? I'm going to talk about you and you talk about me. And then I start practicing talking about your business, and while you're there, you start practicing talking about my business. It becomes easier, it becomes more comfortable. After a while of doing that, if I'm sitting in front of a customer, it's going to be more natural and comfortable for me to say, I know somebody that might be able to help you with that. So promoting just gets you to that point where there's a comfort level with lead passing, and that's where it all begins.
Yeah, that's such a great concept. So when's the next networking group we can hook up at and do that?
We should go to one for sure. My goal is to go to at least 3 networking events every month, and usually more like 6 or 7. So we'll have to do that.
So how many groups are you actively working with right now?
I have right now, as far as leads groups, I have 8 groups, and a couple in Denver, 1 in Tucson, and 4 here in Portland. So
do you travel to Tucson and Denver for those group meetings, or?
About once a year I go there. The way that a leads group should be set up, and really the way a group should be set up, is it should be autonomous to a certain extent. It can have a company like mine that is the servicing organization that provides, the way to do it. I provide rules and procedures, the backbone of it. But a leads group needs to have its own governing body, and it needs to feel like they are in charge of themselves. There has to be buy-in from all the members to make it really work. So my groups in other states they run themselves.
Self-sustaining, wow.
They're self-sustaining. Yeah.
So what does it take to start a leads group or a networking group?
That's where you do need somebody like myself, because it is not easy. Basically, when you want to start a group, you come across, probably 2 or 3 people that say, hey, let's get this going. I understand a little bit about networking, and I'd like to build a bigger network. I'd like to make that a part of my marketing mix. So they come to me and they say, how can we do this? And I'm usually pretty honest with them about the amount of work it's going to take to get that group going. You have to invite a lot of people to come to the group, and there has to be a continuous stream of guests coming in and visiting. And, about 1 out of every 4 guests will end up joining the group. But over time, you start to develop a very strong nucleus, as we're doing in your group. The core group of people is very strong there. And then you keep adding to that core. When you get to a core of about 15 members or so that are very strong, that means you probably have about a 25-member group, and you're passing a lot of leads. So that's really the goal, is keep building a group to the point where you've got a core group, that means members that are very dedicated, of about 15 or so. That puts you at about 25 member level, because there's always some that aren't that dedicated. That, though, is really the sweet spot where you start to see the amazing success that a leads group can have.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's also been refreshing about your group that I found so far, is that you were very upfront about the work that it takes. You laid it out, and your group was fairly inexpensive compared to a lot of the other groups out there. I was very impressed by that as well, and thought this may be too good to be true.
Well, yes, and I guess tying back into your first question about the difference between myself and competition, one certainly is cost. I charge very little compared to my competition. But that's partly because I'm also embracing technology. I think I'm the first leads group organization to have online lead passing, online participation tracking. And that makes it, a little bit easier for me and less expensive for me to do business. If everything happens online, then I can duplicate the process more easily. I can have groups start up in other states without my being there. And they just, every once in a while touch base with me on how they do certain things. Even though I have a president in Colorado that knows probably as much as I do about creating leads groups at this point, she's been doing it a long time. She, every once in a while, will give me a call with something that we have to brainstorm together about and say, what is the best thing here? And I say, well, I did have a situation like that back in 2002. So here's maybe how we should handle that. So yeah, it is a process, and I think you want to do business with an organization like mine, partly, hopefully not just because of cost, but hopefully also because there's that support system there that somebody can always turn to when they need help, when they need an understanding of how to get the leads group to the next level.
Yeah. So are you looking to start any more leads groups in any areas, or?
I am, actually. My goal is to build out Portland and have Portland be an example of how a region can look. So my goal will probably be about 25 leads groups in the Portland area. And then at that point, I will look at expanding this concept into other states. And I still have a lot of things to do with my website as well. It's progressing along with the structure and everything that I'm putting together. But the website's actually going to cover a lot of different aspects of networking. And so there's going to be a training library on the website that my leads group members will be able to access for free, and other people will be able to pay to access. There's going to be also a networking calendar that's going to be built into the website, where anyone that wants to become a free member of the website can go in and put their networking event in there at no charge to them. And it's just a resource for people, but it's also a way that people can get more information about your networking universe and how to get involved. So there's certainly a marketing piece to that as well.
So are there any areas in particular that you're looking to start new groups, that if people are watching this in those areas, they should contact you? Or?
You bet. And Beaverton, Oregon is certainly one area that there's room for a lot of groups in that area, and I'm going to be expanding out there as well. But really just anywhere in the greater Portland area, there's a lot of room for leads groups right now in Portland. So it's kind of interesting that I've been in a few different states, and Portland is the most underdeveloped from a networking standpoint that I've been in. So there's a lot of room for growth here.
Well, that's exciting.
It is.
So how can people get a hold of you then? If they're interested in joining a group or starting one or helping you or getting some benefits, how can they reach you?
You bet. The best way to reach me and all of us, I think, in the information age is by email, and that's info@yournetworkinguniverse.com. And
spelled out YOUR networkinguniverse.com.
Yes.
All one word.
All one word. info@your networkinguniverse.com.
Great, wonderful. So what can you tell me about Mark the person, Mark the dad, Mark the husband? Tell us something about yourself personally.
As perhaps you often hear in stories about people, my children drive me to be more, do more. It's an amazing journey when you have children. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and haven't probably experienced this much growth as a person throughout my other 40 plus years. It's an amazing process, and so that's probably the number one thing that defines family is very important to me. One of my favorite books growing up that my family would often read is Louis L'Amour books, and there was always that theme, especially in the Sackett novels. Any of you that are Louis L'Amour fans out there, I mean, the Sackett novels, there was this theme of family sticking together and helping each other, and that's kind of, that's what drives me, and it extends into the networking world, and that when you create a network, it's kind of like your family. You're putting together a group of people that's hopefully through the life of your career you can connect with and figure out ways to help. One of the things we didn't cover is the philosophy of networking, and pretty much networking is all about giving. It's about helping other people. And if everyone in your network embraces that, you're all going to be thinking, how can I give as much as possible? You're all going to benefit. So that's really where it all begins, is, we gotta think to ourselves, how can I help as many people as possible? It's a great way to look at life, I think, but it creates a better world, and networking I'm very passionate about it because of that.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great philosophy, and I totally agree with it. It's a wonderful philosophy. So it's a real pleasure to be able to visit with you. Anything you want to leave with us in parting here at the end of our interview?
I just want to say thank you to you also. Part of what drives me is members that actually care, and part of this whole interview process resulted from you saying, you know what, I read this great book about marketing, and it had this idea about, doing interviews with each other. It's a great way to get to know each other. It's a great way to market each other's services, do that promotion we were talking about. So, I guess in parting, I would say thank you for taking action and for being an active member of one of my groups.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mark, very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.